Good morning, podcast listeners. My name is Sydney Webster, and welcome back to the Sounds of GU podcast. It's been quite some time, and our world and our campus has been through a lot since we've last chatted. So, a little update: school has started. We are on the path of a new semester, and so things have been a little bit crazy with Corona and just everything that's been going on, but luckily Greenville has started their classes back up in person, and those are going strong, and so we have this whole system in place with testing and everything else, but you'll get to hear more about that as we uncover different topics surrounding our COVID-19 environment on campus over the next couple of weeks. So I am super excited to be back with you all on this podcast, and I'm excited to kind of start something a little bit different and a little bit new. So welcome to the Sounds of GU podcast, and this isn't really a series. We're just going to kind of take it episode by episode, but in this first one, you will get to hear from Vanessa Perkinson, and she is a student on campus that is so wise. And I barely know her, so I'm right there with you guys, and we will together get to know Vanessa a little bit more today. So welcome back, and let's get started. Hi, Vanessa. Welcome to the Sounds of GU podcast.
Thank you. It's so good to be here with you, Sydney.
Yes, I'm so excited. This is awesome.
Me too.
Yes. So if you just want to start by introducing yourself to our listeners, tell us a little bit about who you are, what your major is, and all those kinds of fun things. Anything you want to share about yourself that you think is interesting or cool?
Sure. I don't know how much of me is interesting or cool, but I definitely have something I can say about myself. So yes, my name is Vanessa Perkinson. So those of you listening or watching, hello. It's nice to meet you. I'm a senior here at Greenville. This is my last semester, actually. I'm graduating a semester early in December. Let's see. So I'm a GU, so I'm a transfer student. So I came in as a junior transfer fall of 2019. So to all my transfers out there, you have a special place in my heart. I love all of you. I went to community college and I got an associate's degree before I came to Greenville, which is one of the best decisions I've ever made. So I came here. I'm a theological studies major. So I'm in the Bastion School and I love it. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. What else about myself? I'm a 2 wing 3 on the Enneagram. So I know that's popular around campus. So that means something, I'm sure, to a lot of people listening. Something interesting about me. You know, when I'm in classes and they tell me, like, say a fun fact about yourself, I usually say that I don't know how to ride a bike. So I guess the most interesting thing about me is something that I don't know how to do. So we'll leave it at that, I guess.
That's funny. Wow. So tell me again, you went to what community college?
I went to Lewis and Clark Community College in Godfrey, Illinois.
Okay. Yeah. Let's just stop and chat about the transfer process, because recently I've been realizing, like, a lot of people, I mean, whether they transfer into Greenville, out of Greenville, whatever the process is, it seems like it's complicated, but also, like, a lot of people that transfer to Greenville, I've heard, like, have really good, cool stories and, like, are thankful that they, like, started at the community college place and then transferred. So talk about, like, what that experience was like for you.
Yes. So I could talk about this all day long, because I had such a good experience with community college, first of all, and also just the transfer experience. So I never planned on going to community college. And this is getting, like, I guess a little maybe deeper than it needs to be, but I knew, like, from a very young age that I wanted to go to school for theology, for ministry. I could say a lot more, but life kind of threw me some curveballs, and I ended up at a community college, actually as a graphic design major, believe it or not.
Wow.
I was almost a graphic designer, which is so funny.
Mm-hmm.
And then about, I think 2 semesters into that, I was just like, yeah, this is fun and I like it. And people are telling me that I'm, like, you know, I'm good at it, that I could, like, make a career out of it. this is not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm.
And I was like, I need to get back to what I know that I need to be doing. And so I changed from focus in graphic design back to just kind of general studies, with the intent of transferring to a university to pursue a bachelor's in theology or a bachelor's in ministry. And so, so I spent the next year and a half finishing up that associate's degree. And around fall of my last year, so this would have been, I guess, fall of 2018. So kind of summer of 2018, fall of 2018, somewhere in there. I was like, okay, I'm about to graduate in the spring. This time has gone by so much faster than I anticipated. Like, what am I going to do? And I was like, I know I want to transfer. Where do I want to transfer? And up until that point, I was very intent on I wanted to get out of Illinois. And so I was always like, wherever I'm going to transfer, it needs to be out of state. I can't be in Illinois anymore for a lot of reasons that I won't go into on this podcast. And then one night sorry, to back up just a little bit, there's kind of a relationship between Greenville and Lewis and Clark Community College. We end up getting, I think Lewis and Clark has, I don't know, some type of agreement with Greenville. And I think Lewis and Clark actually gives a lot of education majors to Greenville, or has in the past. So there's somewhat of a relationship there. So I knew the name Greenville. I knew a couple people who went to Greenville. Actually, it's very funny. Someone along my journey in community college had said, they were like, oh, I went to Greenville, you should think about it. And I was like, absolutely not. And they were like, oh, why? And I was like, well, nothing against Greenville. I don't know anything about Greenville, but I'm getting the heck out of Illinois as soon as I can. And now here I am. So so God has a sense of humor. And so so it was like fall of 2018, I guess, like very early fall 2018. And I was like, had been looking at some schools out of state, praying about it a lot, and I just didn't know what I was going to do. And then one night I was laying in bed, and I am very like, I'm not very quick to say like the Holy Spirit put this on my heart or something, but just sort of out of nowhere, I was like, I'm going to look up Greenville. I just want to see what they're about. And so I looked up Greenville, and I got on the website, and I was sort of searching, and I was like, oh, this looks like it might be a good fit for me. And also around that kind of the same time, I kind of had this revelation of, I don't know if I'm ready to leave Illinois yet. Like, I have made a really strong community here, and I think at some point I could be moving out of state, but I don't think that that is like the time yet. So I had kind of narrowed it down to SIUE, and I was going to do, if I went to SIUE, I was going to do their philosophy program, because that's as close as like to religious studies as I could get there, or I was going to come to Greenville and do like ministry or theology. So I set up visits at both places. My visit to Greenville was first, and as soon as I stepped on campus, I was like, yep, this is my place and these are my people. And so I still did the visit to SIUE. SIUE, by the way, is a great school. I just, for me, and the things I think that I value, not just in my like spiritual walk, but also in things like Greenville is a small community, which means it's tight knit. I think Greenville had some things to offer that my community college also offered me, and those were things that I was looking for. And so Greenville was sort of just like checking off all the things on my list. And so I did a visit where I got like a tour, and then Lloyd, who is no longer at admissions, he's not here anymore, but he was like, you need to come for a weekend and do a weekend visit. And I was like, all right. So homecoming weekend of 2018, I was here.
Wow.
Actually, so I live in Hood. I'm the RA here on first floor, and the girl that I stayed with actually lived in Hood at the time. So life is full circle. Yeah, and so I stayed in Hood for the weekend. I did all the activities that you get to do over a homecoming weekend, and I had a great time, and I knew that this is where I wanted to be. And so that kind of started that journey. And so with that, of course, there's all the logistical things of, applying and financial aid and all of that fun stuff. And I mean, because I had already been in college, I was kind of familiar with that. So I think in that way, there are a lot of reasons that I would advocate a community college before transferring to a university. But I think one of the reasons is it gave me some like college experience while still my community college is 20 minutes away from my hometown. So I was still living at home. with my parents and everything, but it gave me that like experience while still kind of being in the familiar at home. And it afforded me the opportunity to lay a really strong academic foundation before I transferred here. So when I came to Greenville, I felt very prepared to be at Greenville and to sort of like jump into, college life because I had already been doing it for 2.5 years. So Greenville, in my experience, did a great job with the transfer process. So when you're a transfer, and this might be, I think this is true for everyone, but you get assigned like an admissions counselor who kind of just walks through you step by step that process of applying and visiting and kind of doing all the things. Mine was Sarah Wilson. Love her. She's amazing. She was really good to me through that process. Made everything like super clear, and was helping me just kind of figure out like next steps and things. And actually, so sorry, side story. She, when I was doing my weekend visit, I had met up with her, and her husband, Jonah, was finishing his, I think, ministry or theology degree at the time.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Hey, do you want to come visit a senior level theology class?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. Like, of course, like, I want to nerd out, like, obviously." So we went to Theo 451, which is Foundations of Christian Doctrine with Mikey Ward. So that was the first time I met Mikey, and I got to sit in on that class. And actually, this semester, I'm taking that class with Mikey. So again,
I knew
life
that was coming.
life is so full circle. But yeah, that was amazing. And I remember sitting in that class and thinking, oh my gosh, in a couple years, like I'm going to be sitting in this class, like taking this class as a student. And now here I am. Yeah. So the transfer process for me was really good. I think a critique that I would say is they make the getting to Greenville very easy and seamless. When you get here as a transfer student, you get lost in the shuffle, though. I think one thing that Greenville could be doing better with is once students are here. So, like I noticed at the beginning of the school year, when like all the freshmen are coming in and everything, there's a lot of things that are like tailored to freshmen and marketed towards freshmen, and maybe they can kind of consider transfer juniors to also be like freshmen because it's our first year here. But being a transfer junior is definitely a different experience than being a freshman, and so I think Greenville would do well to make more of a space here for transfer students once they're actually on campus. Again, I think like the getting to Greenville was super easy. They were with
Yeah.
me all the way. But once I got here, I was like, I don't know anyone. And everyone's super nice, but I don't know anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found myself, I got lost in the shuffle for a couple weeks. Thankfully, I am not shy at all. So that didn't take very long for me to get to know people. But I'm thinking of like students at my community college who aren't maybe as outgoing as I am or
Yeah.
extroverted. That I think that like sometimes that process I think definitely could have been harder for them. So I think there's good in how Greenville operates their transfer process. I also think there's ways that they could do better. But overall, like I've had a great experience.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I think that's great. I love your story. I think there's always something to do better, and I love hearing people say, "This was my experience. This is what was great, and like if I could change anything, like this is what it is." Because I think you're right. Like Greenville does have such a strong sense of community, and I've never experienced because I came in, my freshman year, and I've been here all 4 years, so I haven't experienced what it feels like to step in the middle of it. And as a freshman, it does take a while to like accumulate to the community, accumulate to college life, but like you've already done that once. And so now for your next, like your junior and senior year, when you're at this new college, there is just a kind of different experience. So thank you for sharing, because I think any transfer student that's listening can really relate to that. um so let's talk about COVID-19 a little bit. I
okay.
hate like I don't want it to consume our whole conversation, because
No, for
there's a lot more to life than that. But it also is like a really real thing that's affecting everyone's life, but I think it's affecting college campuses on a different level. So tell us about how your experience was last semester when the whole world shut down basically, and going home and going through quarantine. What was that like for you?
Yes. So, yeah, God, it's so weird. It's weird that like we're looking back and that was like 6 months ago. It's just
Mm-hmm.
crazy. So yes, in March we went on spring break, and by the end of spring break they were telling us, hey, there's going to be an extra week of spring break, and then we were told, basically like, hey, we're going full remote for the rest of the semester. So I spent spring break. I spent part of it at home, but then I spent the second half in North Carolina the at a conference for female clergy, with a couple people from Greenville. And so I was in North Carolina when like the world shut down. What was very surreal was at the conference. I mean, it was like a 3-day conference or something, a normal conference. And as things are happening and as information is sort of coming forward about COVID and how it's hitting the US, um, we're watching the conference like having to make adjustments. So we went from sitting in rooms where like all the chairs were together like normal, and that sounds like I'm talking about like a crime now, right? Because we're all like used to being like socially distanced. Yeah, but we were all just in a room as a crowd together, chairs together, to them having to split us up into groups and section us off, and we all had to like rotate to the different sessions. We would have to, so every group had the chance to watch one of the sessions or one of the speakers live. And then for the other sessions, they would be in a room watching a video of it because they could only have so many people in the room. And then when you walked into the room, instead of the chairs being together, they actually had to go and like measure and space all of them out. So crazy. So it was like I was watching the effects of COVID happen in real time at this conference. I also was like thinking, oh, they're going to cancel the conference. Like we're all going to have to go back. And then I was like, my head was really going to an extreme at one point. I was like, am I going to get stuck in North Carolina? I can't be here.
No, but I
I didn't
think
know
that's
what was going to
how a
happen.
lot of us felt. I was in
Yeah.
Nashville and I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And then I went to St. Louis. Like my spring break was Nashville for a weekend and then St. Louis. And so I'm sitting there with my friends in a restaurant getting these emails, and then I get more emails. It's like, what's going on? What do we do? You know, and our life has continued to stay that way since.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm thankful for like the normal that we get to experience now, but yes, at first it was like, whoa. So I make it back to Greenville, and like I said, I'm an RA in Hood. So they're telling everybody like you are basically like being sent home at this point, or you can't come back yet, essentially is what they were telling students. And so I was like, well, crap, like, what am I going to do? I got very lucky because what they ended up deciding was, initially before, so to kind of explain to people who are maybe like don't know this,
Yeah.
what they ended up doing was giving students, before everything really shut down, they were giving students the option to come back to campus and either stay on campus for the rest of the semester, check out of their rooms as normal and go back home, or just come back and kind of pick up essential belongings and then, and then go back home if they wanted to. The first thing that they did before that was sort of out there to everybody was they gave the RAs the option. They were like, you can stay on campus, you can live here for the rest of the semester, you'll get paid as normal, you can do the things, or you can go home. Obviously, we're not going to make you stay. And I was thankful for that because I really wanted to stay on campus, actually. I think, yeah, I am not someone who does well typically with online classes anyway. I mean, I can do them, I just don't like them.
Right.
But also I was just like, this is my normal, right? Being here at Greenville and having classes here, like, this is my home. And so I was like, shoot, like that's really gonna mess me up. And so thankfully they gave us the option, so I ended up staying. So I got really, really lucky in that regard, to get to stay. And then at some point when everything really, like when the state went on lockdown, they had to tell students like, okay, we can't take any more students back, and students ended up not having an option anymore. So I was really thankful that I was able to kind of make that decision early on. Yeah, and spring semester was really interesting for me. So I was taking 7 classes, don't recommend. um,
Wow.
yeah. And yes, because and by the way, I'm not just like a glutton for punishment. I did that because I am on this track with Greenville to transfer to Seattle Pacific Seminary to get my master's when I'm done here. And so
Which is so
in order to
cool.
fit in all the classes, yeah, I'm super excited about that. It's crazy that I'm even saying that. But yeah, in order to fit those classes in, I was like, I got to take 7 in the spring. It's just what I got to do. And I did it. And so it was like, of
Good
course,
for
that
you.
semester was, yeah, when everything went up in flames. So I was like, cool. Um, yeah, I got super lucky though. My professors were all, for the most part, really understanding and set it up, I think, the best way that they could. Again, hindsight is always 2020, of course, like there's hindsight 2020. I didn't mean to make a pun. But hindsight is always 2020. Like, of course, when you look back, it's like, yeah, this should have been done better, could have been done better. But I think for the time being, pretty much everybody was just doing the best that they could with like
Right.
what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what that looked like for me was honestly a lot of hanging out in Hood Lounge with Bree Hinton, Johnny Hinton, and a few other people, watching a lot of Netflix. I mean, just like really messing up my entire like schedule, right? I mean, I was staying up super late, I was sleeping in, and which sounds like a dream come true when you're a kid. But as a 23-year-old woman, I was like, this is really screwing with me. It was really messing me up. On top of, I didn't know during that time, but I was going through some like physical health issues, and I knew that I was, but I didn't really know where it was stemming from. But it was making me really tired all the time. I was like, I had no energy. I mean, normally like my like zeal that I would typically have, I just like did not have. And so that kind of combined with being in this space where I'm just stuck inside all the time. I'm in these online classes, so I have nowhere physically to go that's sort of motivating me to get up and go. It was hard. I mean, I definitely went through a season of depression there, as I'm sure a lot of people did. Um, and I made it through. I got my physical health kind of like figured out, and so I'm feeling much better now. But yeah, it was a combination of like, whoa, this is so like cool in a sense, in the way of not the pandemic, but in the way of like, this is just such a unique experience that we're getting to have. And like, I remember telling some people, we were hanging out like watching Netflix and just doing whatever, and I was like, guys, this is just weird that like this is our life right now. I mean, there's a global pandemic, the school is shut down, but we're still here. Like, life will never be like this again. And this sucks, right? And this is terrible, and this pandemic is awful. But also, like, it's kind of funny that we're creating these memories that, like, when we're old, we're going to tell our grandkids about this. You know what I mean? And that was, so I think I was kind of aware that we were, like, living in history, like, during that time, and still are. So it was tough, but it was also, now I look back on those memories with some fondness. They were, they were their own experience. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Everyone had such a different experience during that transition. Like, the whole world shut down, and Greenville itself, colleges across the nation were sending kids home and figuring out what to do, and we were all just kind of scrambling, honestly.
Yeah.
But you're right, we're living in the middle of history, and like 5 years ago and 5 years from now, who knows like what this will look like, and so you just never know. And this is stuff we're gonna go down, tell our kids, tell our grandkids. So we are definitely living in the middle of history. So let's flash forward a little bit to like now in your life on campus now. Like, what are you involved in? What is your experience like now that we're in person, and how Greenville has done everything they can to make that possible? Because like you said, online classes are hard. And I think a lot of people can do it. Like, we can all make it work, but it's not always everyone's first choice of like, oh, I want to go online. But in my experience, Greenville's done a really good job. Like, I know this summer our professors have prepared for both online and in person, so that at any point, if one student, multiple students, everybody has to be quarantined, we have the option to do our classes online because they were prepared. So long story short, kind of just what's your experience like now on campus, COVID related and non-COVID related?
Yeah, so what am I involved in on campus? Well, yes, I'm the RA of First Hood. I work in the career services and calling development office with Kelly Pryor. I'm her student assistant. So I do that a few hours a week. I'm not taking class, I'm only taking and so I'm still busy, and yet somehow this semester feels like a relief to me. And then actually I get the very unique experience. So speaking of COVID related things, so Greenville has the testing center set up for everyone to get their saliva COVID test twice a week. And I actually work in the testing center. So twice a week I'm in there, either checking people in or collecting their spit. And
Lovely.
which is, so technically that's through the health department, but because it is happening on campus, yeah, that's definitely been a unique kind of experience to get that job and to get to be in on kind of what's going on, which I'm thankful for. Yeah, I think, as far as COVID, it's again, it's one of those things where, I mean, who would have thought that like this is where we would be right now? You know what I mean? Like when we rang in 2020, at the new year, like who thought that this is where the year would take us? And how do you prepare for a global pandemic? I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
And so I think in light of that, again, as I said, when you're reflecting on it, of course, there's always going to be things where it's like, oh, this should have been tweaked or this could have been done. But I think Greenville, as with probably every other higher education institution across the globe, like has done the best that they can with what they have. I think that because at Greenville, a huge part of the experience is the community aspect. It's really hard to imagine being at Greenville and not being at Greenville, which I think students can understand. I think faculty can understand. I mean, we're a small campus, we're a tight-knit community, and it would be really, really hard to imagine this year being at home. I think at first, when I found out we were coming back to campus, there was a mix of emotions. I was excited because it's my last semester and I didn't want to spend it at home doing online classes. But I also was like, okay, Greenville, I appreciate this, but also what is this going to be like? Because I mean, safety of everyone needs to come first. How is that going to play out? I think because they were figuring it out kind of over the summer, in real time, there was maybe like some miscommunication in certain ways along the line. But now being on campus, I think, the system is as good as it can get. I think the fact that Greenville has secured this testing for students and for, everyone on campus is amazing. Not every college gets to have that. And we're really lucky that we get to have that. And so I'm super thankful for that. I think another one of my worries was like, okay, they have this stuff set up in place, but like, are people going to follow it? Like, are people going to do it? There's so many different views about COVID and, conspiracy theories and things. So it's like, are people even going to be like willing to kind of comply with what they're being asked to do? And working in the testing center and working as an RA, I kind of get to see a lot of that behind the scenes. And actually, of course, like any system, it's not perfect. The people in it aren't perfect, but actually I've been so pleasantly surprised with how well it's been going. I think a lot of people at the beginning of the semester were placing their bets of when like campus was going to shut down.
For sure.
And I was not placing bets, but I was thinking in my head, like, okay, how long is this going to be sustainable for? Is this sustainable? In any like system, there's always going to be kind of holes in it. But I think thus far, like we're doing really well. I think, I think Greenville with COVID has done definitely the best that it's been able to make it possible for students to come back to campus and still like engage in that community, but also be as safe as possible. And I'm happy to see that the majority of students and people on campus like are complying with those things. So I think, I think in that regard, at this point, I don't have, there's been a lot of good, and I'm thankful for that. And as far as like my just personal kind of life on campus and what that looks like for me, crazy busy. Like I said, I mean, between RA, testing center, 4 classes, career services, I'm prepping to move to Seattle for grad school in January. It's a wild semester, and in the midst of like everything going on in the world, it's a crazy semester.
Right.
But it's been um, one of my biggest like focuses this semester has been, preparing for the future and kind of preparing for this next chapter in my life, but also being really present in what's going on in the here and now, and really soaking in everything that's happening, because in a few years I'm gonna like reflect on this time and be like, oh, I wish I could go back. Like those were, that was a great time in my life. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really appreciating everything. I got to speak at Vespers
Yeah, you
a
did.
week ago. Yeah, I spoke at Vespers, and that was an amazing experience. That's the second time that I've spoken at Vespers, and um, preaching and public speaking, although it's a part of like the ministry thing, it makes me nervous every time I do it. Like there's never a time where I'm like, I got this. I'm always like, oh no. But it went really well. And I mean, there's so many people on campus who are just very supportive of me and very kind. And so that was fun.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was there since we're doing Vespers and Chapel outside, especially in the dark. I'm sure up there you can't see at all like who's there, but I was there, so I was in the back. Go Vanessa.
Oh, thank you for being there. Yeah, well, it's funny because the setup right now is, I mean, it happens at 9:30 at night, so it's already dark. But then they have these huge lights that they put in front of the library steps. So when you're when you're on the steps, like staring out, I mean, literally, like you're blind, like you can't see anything but the lights. And I think I even said at one point, I was like, "Is everyone still with me? Like I can't see any of you." But it was so fun, and I actually like the outside vibe, like.
It
I
is
love
nice.
Whitlock, and I love having I love being in that space, but there's something like very cool about being outside for Vespers. So I don't know, maybe once like I don't know, maybe that can become more of a regular thing or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think
but how cool is it that like, we're like, oh my gosh, we can't meet for chapel, we can't meet for Vespers, we can't be together in Whitlock, and they come up with, oh, let's just use the library steps and have chapel and Vespers there. Like, I am blown away by. I mean, I'm not surprised that Greenville still continues to do everything they can for spiritual formation on campus, but I'm just so thankful that like we have that. We have so many people who want chapel to happen, who want Vespers to happen, who want small groups to happen. Like there's all these different ways that you can get connected to community and your spiritual journey, and it's all available to you. And even like despite all of the COVID stuff, they're still making it work for as long as they can, as best as they can. So yeah, the whole thing is just really cool. I hope we can continue doing it too.
yeah, no, I completely agree. I think yeah, God, there's just so many adjustments to make in the midst of COVID-19. And I think the way that we've been able to not just like have students on campus, but still maintain like solid programming across the board, right? Like Res Life and the things that they've done and are doing, spiritual development with Chapel and Vespers, just like the ways that we've been able to adjust and still, it's different, right? But it's still good. And I think that's just amazing. And I think another thing too that is a positive in the midst of this like awful global pandemic is it really affords everyone the opportunity to have to be like creative and innovative about like how they're doing things.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking particularly like, colleges, universities, and then like as a theology major, like I'm also thinking about the church and just ways that we kind of get settled into routines, and we kind of get settled into like, okay, this is the way things are, and these are the things that like these are the boxes that we fit in that sort of define who we are, right? So for Greenville, it's things like everyone going to Whitlock for chapel, or the different events that are kind of happening. I'm even thinking at the beginning of the semester, like normally we have the all-town meeting where we're introducing all of our Res Life groups,
Right.
and then we have the freshman mugging, and it's like, well, how can we do that? Sorry for
Root
people who
beer.
don't know what the freshman
Yeah.
mugging is. Everyone's safe. It's you get mugs with like root beer floats. I'm sorry, I should have.
No, we've talked about this on the podcast before, but yeah, the freshman mugging is not like a mugging. It's like a mugging with a
We're
root beer
not
float.
hazing anybody on campus, I promise. Yeah, but just thinking of those events that are like traditions at Greenville, right? That define who we are. And it's like, who are we without those things? And I think that COVID has really brought that question up across the board. I mean, across like, not just at Greenville, not just at colleges, not just in one area, but really across the board of like our whole world and how it operates is like defining or having to redefine those things, and say like, okay, here's the system that we operate out of. These are the things that have made it what it is. What is that system without those things? And what can that system be without those things? I got to do an internship over the summer at a church in Springfield at it's Knox Mills Free Methodist Church. And to kind of be in on seeing behind the scenes of church leaders having to make decisions in real time about how to adjust for these things is just like crazy, but also awesome in that, like, you know, we're having to ask some really important questions about the systems that are in place in our world and why those things are important and what it means for, you know, the church to be the church without being able to meet on Sunday mornings. I mean, some of that is changing like a little bit now, you know, or like, you know, colleges and things. It's like, who are we without like this type of programming or without these things that we can normally do? And it's also causing us to have to kind of rise to the occasion and say like, okay, if these values, you know, if community at Greenville is still a value that we hold in high regard and that we still need to be defined by, what that looks like is going to have to change, and how can we do that? And so being able to have these events like outside, you know, socially distanced, I think it's causing us to be more innovative about like what type of events we're doing, or even like you said with Vespers and Chapel, just like what that looks like. And it's cool because it's like, what new traditions and what new things are going to come out of this really like terrible season. So even in horrible things, there can be good. So
no, your perspective, wow. Wow. Yeah, you're so right. I mean, you're right. There's always something positive to take out of it. And like Greenville, like we define ourselves through community, through the people, through all of these different things. And so while it looks completely different this year, like it might look different from here on out because of what happens in 2020, you know? And so I just think that's really cool. But different is good. Different is good. And I think that's something, another value that that Greenville holds. Well, Vanessa, that's kind of all I have, unless you want to talk about anything else.
I don't think so.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm just really appreciative for who you are. I mean, like, you have so much influence, like, on your floor, in Hood, on this campus. Like, you're just someone that people can see around and just say, oh my gosh, there's Vanessa. And it's just, you're just a bright, smiley, bubbly, bold personality that brightens this campus. So thank you for sharing a little bit about your Greenville story and about how COVID's affected it. I know people that are listening, whether they are looking at Greenville or they're alumni or they're current students, hopefully they gained a little insight into a little bit about the transfer process and just how COVID is affecting a college student on this little campus that's so amazing. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll see you around. See you later.
Bye.